Welcome to the Team Teach podcast. I'm Clare, and in each episode you'll find me talking with an expert guest to learn more about behaviour. We squeeze a lot into each episode. You'll listen to the latest thinking in behaviour, continue your professional development with our book recommendation, and then I'll send you away with 3 practical tips you can use in your setting. I'm joined today by Amy Miskimmin and Abbie Gillies, and we're talking about supporting care experienced children in school. So excited to have you both here. Amy, do you mind starting to tell the listener a bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having us. My name's Amy Miskimmin. I'm the Participation Development Worker for Our Hearing's Our Voice. Our Hearing's Our Voice, or OHOV for short, is an independent board of children and young people aged 8 to 18 who have got lived experience of the children's hearing system in Scotland and their care experienced as well. We've got 15 members all across Scotland, and our aim is to drive improvement in the children's hearing system.
Brilliant. Thanks, Amy. And Abbie, how about you?
Hello. So my name's Abbie. I'm a board member for Our Hearing's Our Voice, and I've been with OHOV for about the last maybe 3 years. I've got lived experience of the hearing system and care experience, specifically residential care. I've had a lot of good and bad experiences, and I'm really driven to create change for other young people who come through the system.
Nice. And yeah, we're so privileged to have both of you hear your experiences and really to hear more about how we can impact school staff to, I don't know, make some changes to make the lives of care experienced children better in school. I just wondered, I know that you both have a big passion around Our Hearing's Our Voice, but Amy, I just wondered if you could tell the listener a bit more about the goals and the beginnings of Our Hearing's Our Voice.
Yeah, of course. So Our Hearing's Our Voice came up 10 years ago. We're actually hosted by the Scottish Children's Reporter Administration. That's the body that hosts children's hearings, but we also work closely with Children's Hearing Scotland. So we're 10 years old as of this year, and as I say, we came about because it was young people who wanted to drive improvement for other children who are still coming through the system. Now, in October 2022, the young people at Our Hearing's Our Voice had a really specific focus on improving the language that children and young people experience, not just in their children's hearing, but in all settings across care. So we developed a group called Language Leaders, and Abbie's a part of that group as well. So although we're focused on the children's hearing system and on the care system, Language Leaders allows us to have a laser focus on the language and communication that children and young people experience. Abbie, I don't know if you want to say a little bit about your involvement in Language Leaders.
So, yeah, I've been a part of Language Leaders since the start, but at the very beginning, we were called Word Busters, but we felt like that was sort of deleting and removing words that are used in the care system, where some children and young people actually like certain words or they dislike certain words, and it's different for everyone. So from that, we became the Language Leaders, and we came up with the language principles that me and Amy are going to talk about today.
Did you know that you can become a trainer and deliver Team Teach training to staff within your own organisation? Have the flexibility to choose when, where and who you deliver your training to throughout the year. Find out more about this cost-effective option on the Team Teach website. I just had one additional question for Abbie about specifically what drew you into being involved in these projects? What spurred you on to get so involved in it?
I suppose it's just been having like a mix of good and bad experiences throughout the care system, and being able to recognise where professionals don't always get it right. Sometimes I felt like I wasn't really as capable because of the way professionals would treat me when I was a lot younger. So now being able to speak to professionals and be like, hey, here's what we want to change, so you can make our lives better, and that's really driven that.
Yeah, I hear that. So this drive to change things, and I think it's amazing, and we really do need as many people as we can to drive change and to push things forward. And I'm really interested to hear more about those language principles of kind of how we can help school staff or any staff, I suppose, working with care experienced children. I know Amy had a few questions that she'd thought about to ask Abbie. So, Amy, do you want to fire away some of those questions?
Yeah, I'm happy to, Claire. Thank you. One of the language principles is that we would like for all children and young people to experience language that is non-stigmatising. Because as you've just said, Claire and Abbie, the language and communication that children experience in school and in various settings can build them up or it can tear them down. And we really wanted to focus on stigma. So, Abbie, would you like to talk a little bit about care experience and stigma in the classroom?
Yeah, so when I was going through school, there was a big sort of stereotype about care experienced children being troublemakers, and they weren't going to go anywhere, they weren't going to go to higher education, they were going to sit in the low of the class. When in reality, that isn't always the case. We've had a few board members talk about how they felt like they called them articulate and they had really high expectations of them. Or it's like, an experience for me would be, I had a free period in school and I was sitting studying for advanced higher English, and a teacher came around and was like, "What are you doing? Why are you skipping class?" And I was like, "But I'm not. I'm on a free period because I'm doing advanced higher and I'm just studying." And she was like, "You doing advanced higher English?" And then she took me to my year head. So that's a big thing about the stigma and the stereotype, because I was capable of that and I done it. But because people knew my background, teachers knew my background, it was like, oh, but how could she be capable of that? So a big thing for that is, it's almost like expecting to have challenging behaviour in the classroom, and oh, this person won't bring in their homework anyway, they won't bring in their PE kit, even though this is just young people who have most likely went through quite a lot of trauma in their life, and they're just the way they behave is just how they're trying to communicate. So one of the things that we talked about in language leaders was, under our non-stigmatising principle, was that when teachers or any professional is talking about or documenting a child's behaviour, they're like, oh, they kicked off, they were aggressive in class, when really we should be describing the behaviour in factual terms. Like, he kicked his chair away and he walked out the class and he seemed upset. So that's a better way to say it, rather than labelling the behaviour. And I mean, our people who read that in the future are going to be like, okay, this child's aggressive, so when they come into my class I'm expecting that behaviour, and that's not the way it should be.
So you've said before that care experienced children have often faced quite complex trauma, which can manifest itself in the classroom in challenging behaviour. Something you always say, Abbie, is that all behaviour is communication.
Yep.
And you've said as well, you just give a really good example there, the importance of describing the behaviour in factual terms, rather than saying, you know, this child is aggressive, he's bored, he's disengaged, he's rude, he's violent. Describe exactly what happened. Don't place your judgments on it. Don't label the child. Describe the behaviour. Abbie, why do you think we should avoid labelling the behaviour like that? Saying things like, he's aggressive, he's violent.
Because then it just feels like you're being judged.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't make it feel like school is a safe environment, you know? And then when other people are picking up on that, like other teachers, they can form opinions and expectations of that. And it's like, but I don't want that to be carried with me. Like, maybe I've just had a bad day, maybe that child's just had a bit of a bad night and they've come into school, they just want to sit and get their work done, but they've gotten a bit upset, they forgot their homework, whatever, you know. But a big thing for our teachers would be, if they're reading back and you've got so-and-so, this teacher for this subject, and then this one, and it's like, okay, this person said they're aggressive, this one says that they don't engage in class, they're disengaged. That just forms a paper trail of judgments that they can't escape. So it doesn't make school a safe environment, and that's what we want to try and avoid and change.
Yeah, you're exactly right. So the child goes through the school with, you've described it as a paper trail of judgments. It's kind of like the written records that follow the child all the way through, with descriptions that the teachers may be given to the child, like he is violent, he's sneaky, he can be manipulative, he can
Yeah.
be aggressive, that sort of thing. It reminds me, Abbie, of this experiment that we looked into as part of our language leaders group. It was called Pygmalion in the Classroom. I don't know if your listeners will be familiar with it. They might be. It's quite a famous one, Claire. Have you heard of it?
Yeah, I have actually. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just briefly describe it in case
Yeah.
anybody hasn't. It was done by two psychologists, Rosenthal and Jacobson, in the 1960s, I think. And they came out to a school and they tested children. And they said to the children's teacher, this was at the very start of the school year, we've given your children an aptitude test. And these children in this column did exceptionally well. They're going to thrive. They're going to do really, really well this academic year, we imagine. This group here didn't do so well and are likely to need a lot of support. They're not likely to attain quite as highly. And at the end of the year, Rosenthal and Jacobson came back out to the classroom and gave the children another aptitude test. And as predicted, the children in the first column did exceptionally well. They achieved really, really highly academically. The children in the second column didn't. But then the experimenters revealed that they hadn't actually marked the aptitude tests the first time around. They'd made up the lists at random. And just by telling the teacher, these children will thrive, these children will succeed, and these ones won't, it almost became a self-fulfilling prophecy. The teacher expected more, she had higher expectations, she had more faith in the children that she believed just from being told it by somebody else that they'll succeed. And just from having been told by somebody else, these children will not succeed, they'll not thrive. She didn't push them as hard, she didn't support them, and they didn't thrive. So that's something we kind of talked about a few times when we've been out speaking to different groups like Strathclyde University students. I just think it's really fascinating. And as Abbie said, when you've got this paper trail of judgments following you through school, stigma sticks. It's hard to shake that off and it's hard to kind of break free of it, isn't it?
One thing just in prep for the interview, I listened to the Strathclyde video it's on YouTube, isn't it? Yeah, to watch. And one thing that really struck me that resonates with what you're talking about was Abbie was talking in that video somewhat about privacy, because some of the profiling of care experienced children is perhaps simply with stigma, but also does everyone need to know the information as well? And that really struck me listening, and something that at the back of my head I'd considered probably in my profession working in schools, but maybe wasn't at the forefront. So I don't know if there was something around that we could think about sharing with listeners.
One of the things that we highlighted at Language Leaders to do with privacy was a big thing was like teachers gossiping about like a child and being like, oh yeah, you know, I heard that so-and-so, their mum is going through this or that, and then it becomes this big thing, like everyone knows. Because when you are in the workplace and you're with colleagues, like I know at my own work I can be a bit like that, and you sit and gossip about people, and gossiping's a part of, everyone does it realistically, but when it comes to vulnerable children and young people in a school environment where it is meant to be safe, because although I had bad experiences at school, I also had like really good ones, and that outweighed them.
Yeah, some of the ways as well that teachers speak about children and their families, maybe to each other in the staff room, maybe not meaning any ill will, but it can actually perpetuate really harmful stereotypes. The media is really bad for that as well, the way that they talk about care experienced children and their families as vulnerable, coming from broken homes, going through a damaged system. They talk about alcoholics and addicts. It's just more labelling, and it just reinforces this idea that they're different, you know. There's them and there's us. We're the teachers, we know better, and there's those families. And even when we mean it in a well-intentioned way, like, oh, here's Jamie coming into primary 3. Did you hear what happened with his dad? Yeah, he's a poor soul. That sort of thing, that kind of language.
Yeah.
It's not terribly helpful. So as Abbie said earlier, you're better just sticking to the facts, describing things in factual terms without putting our own judgments and our own biases on it. because it can be really harmful. It's worth looking into each and every child. They've got some fantastic resources and seminars on this sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking back to working in a pupil referral unit a few years ago, and we had an individual that was accused of an incident in the dining hall, and everyone was sure, like staff were so sure, oh yeah, it was so and so, like they kicked off again, and all that language that you're talking about. And then the irony is, when we checked the attendance record, that individual wasn't even in school. But you were saying before about the like kind of expecting certain behaviors, and so much so you see someone there that's not even there. So you can see kind of how powerful it is when we kind of get into the mindset that we're expecting kind of a certain behavior to happen. And I think my experience on the other side of being in staff rooms, hearing people gossiping, like it does happen. But then that gossip then turns to infecting other people's beliefs and perceptions of what that child may or may not do. It's a super powerful cycle, and so important that people realise when they're part of it.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I used to be a primary school teacher for 8 years, and whenever we got class lists out, there'd be certain names. I'm like, oh God, not him. And I'd never met the child before, but just from what I'd heard, I was dreading it, and I was already looking for these behaviours. And then as soon as anything happened, I was like, well, I knew it would be like this. I know better now, but just the way people talk about children, it can be really, really harmful. And we're not completely naive. We know there can be challenging behaviour in classroom. Abbie, when teachers are managing behaviours in the classroom that they find challenging, what would you suggest that they do?
I would suggest just talking to the child privately. I'm a firm believer in connection before correction. You should be able to sit down and be at a child's level and just be like, hey, what's going on? I noticed this was the way you're behaving in class. You done this, I just want to see how you're feeling. And then once you get like a sort of underlying answer from that, you can be like, look, can we please not do that again? It wasn't great. That's just an example, but you should be able to sit down and listen to a child and not think that you're above them. It's not just about what you say, but it's how you say it. So I remember teachers in my school, they would point at a child or a young person and they would shout whilst they're like towering over them, because like we are all children in school, so the teachers are considerably taller, you know what I mean? I remember watching that, and looking back now, I can be like, well, they could have had like a really troubling time at home where they've maybe got someone like a parent or a carer or whoever towering over them, pointing at them and shouting at them. And that could be really re-traumatizing. And that could trigger a trauma response in a child. So it's all about being trauma informed as well. You should never speak to a child like that in any environment, especially a school, when that's another place where they're away from home. So you should be able to keep a respectful distance, avoid shouting or aggressive body language such as pointing. Amy, you actually said something pretty good about pointing earlier to me, and I think it'd be quite good if you could share that.
Oh,
I'm intrigued.
I said, somebody told me one time about pointing and said basically pointing at someone is putting a fist in their face, but with a finger at the end of it.
It's one digit away from a fist.
Yeah.
I have a colleague that tells a great story. I won't share it on the podcast, but you can use your imagination of what someone might do with your finger pointing in their face. And I think about quite often, I think about the way that we might interact with children and young people in services versus how we would care for our staff team. And there's absolutely no way, if you were a bit offended or irritated by a way a colleague, for example, was behaving or doing something, that you would be getting in their face and shouting, because actually that would be a disciplinary, you'd be getting into, all sorts of bother with it. And then I guess it's thinking about that, losing that hierarchy and having everyone at the same level where we can communicate on the same level. The first question or point that Abbie made there about checking in with the feeling, like I'm always thinking about an individual that I work with, like, are you okay? Is like the first thing that will come to mind when I see something happen, as opposed to what are you doing, or, you know, blaming the behavior. So I think that's such great kind of, advice or guidance around the language that we use. I wondered a bit, I don't know how this will land or if it resonates with both of you, but I was really drawn to the phrase from your service, nothing about us without us, and kind of the power of using students or young people's voice in helping to determine what happens. So I don't know if you've got things to share about your thoughts around that. Is it a motto? I don't know, or statement or goal, all of those things.
Yeah, nothing about us without us is just recognising children as the experts in their own lives. We don't always have the capacity to make the right or the best decision for them, but we do owe it to children to listen, to give them that time and space and say, right, I'm listening. What do you need? Tell me what you need. Tell me what I can do. And I think this is something our young people have said, is you grow up kind of powerless, having all these big decisions made about you, especially if you're in the care system. You can be moved from pillar to post. You can go to school one day and you don't come home again. You can end up somewhere different. You can end up with a foster family you've never met before. It can feel very powerless. And that's sometimes why children do act out as a trauma response. As Abbie said earlier, behaviour is communication. But if you involve children from the start, listen to them, ask them what they need, ask them what their preferences are, and then explain exactly what's happening and why it's happening. It's so powerful. It's just what you said earlier, Claire, about being on the same level. You know, it's not seeking to control or move about people or, be the authority. It's about treating them with respect.
Yeah, and I think, we've talked through about, language in schools, but I think adopting in schools or services this idea that we don't want to do things to people, children, young people in this case, we want to do it with them. And that's why that motto really jumped out, because I think all the things that Abbie's kind of talked about here, there is a sense of school staff. I mean, not always, we want to make that clear as well. Some people will be absolutely already on board with, with lots of the ideas we're talking about. I guess I'm talking quite generically, just about hearing the views of young people and actually taking that on board. And I think that is actually, weirdly, a really big piece of work still to be done in lots of services, across the nation, really.
Yeah, definitely. And it's about getting the balance right as well. We talk about balance quite a lot in terms of our principals and language leaders. It's about recognising the difficulties and the struggles that the young person's having, but also recognising what's going well in their lives and having those conversations. Abbie, what do you think balance might look like in an education setting?
Sometimes, like, a teacher might highlight, well, they didn't do so well here, this actually happened in class, like all sort of negatives. But we should really be balancing that with, but they actually done this. They got this in this test. They handed this in on time and they done really well. So we're balancing the good and the bad, so that we aren't just being like, oh, you're not good at this, you're not capable, you need to do better. But it's like, yeah, you could do better, but you're also doing really well here. So let's look at that as well.
Yeah, so it's about the conversations that teachers have with children on a day-to-day basis. It's about not just recognising the struggles and the difficulties, but also what's going well for them, isn't it?
Yeah.
Another language principle that we talk about in language leaders is about personalisation and personalising language. I think we very, very briefly touched on it earlier on. It's about suiting the needs and preferences of each unique child. But Abbie, what do you think that might look like with care experienced children in the classroom?
So it could be like a teacher having to phone home, or when it does come up to a parents' night and it's like, oh, who will you be bringing? It's always about just asking them, like, how that looks for them. So, for example, like, if his foster parents, he says, oh, my foster parents are going to come in, and the teacher's like, how do you normally, like, address them? Like, do you just call them their names? Do you maybe call them mum and dad? Like, you don't know that, so it's better to ask, and you should never assume.
I actually think, I used to teach English back in the day. I'm not a practicing teacher now, or do you ever stop? I don't know. But I do remember thinking about the curriculum, Abbie, quite a bit, particularly when I worked for a fostering and adoption agency kind of after teaching, and then just realizing like how littered the curriculum is with language that does not suit care experienced children, adopted children, or many other, blended families, etc. And I really think about that. And I know that's not necessarily language that we're saying out loud. It might be language that we're consuming through text and things. But I think even that, it makes it harder for those to feel included when the language in some of our curriculum is exclusionary as well.
Yeah, and that's one of our principles as well. It's about involving children, making sure children are involved with all aspects of their care and education. And one way we can do that is by using clear, inclusive language. We talk about trying to avoid things like acronyms. Abbie, when you were at school, did you ever come across acronyms and confusing language that stopped you from getting fully involved?
Yeah, quite a lot actually. We heard GIRFEC being thrown around quite a lot. UNCRC, Shinari, which that most likely sounds like a weird one, but because we all know what Shinari is now. But I remember in school, and it's like, okay, in PSE, we're going to talk about Shinari, and it's like, what is Shinari? What do you mean? And then eventually, once it is like split up and it's like safe, healthy, achieving, nurturing stuff, it was easy to understand. But stuff like GIRFEC and UNCRC, it was just kind of thrown about quite a lot, and it was really confusing. It's like, I don't really know what that is. What does it stand for? Why are we learning about it? You know?
Yeah, something we say at language leaders is, why keep language in that keeps children out?
Yep.
I guess it comes back to that, doesn't it?
Yeah, and hosts of podcasts, because I don't know what they mean either. But I'm okay with that. No, inclusive language. It's or why do it when we just want to make things simple? I guess
Yeah. Why make life harder?
Exactly, Abbie. Why make it harder? And I'm not going to be able to sleep tonight not knowing those acronyms. But I'm going to look it up after the podcast, and we'll leave our listeners hanging if they don't know what they are. But I just wondered, it has been like genuinely super interesting to hear both about the project from both sides and to hear your experiences, Abbie, as well. But I wondered if we could finish the podcast just with 3 top tips.
Absolutely. All behaviour is a form of communication. Second one would be connection before correction. And a third one would be nothing about us without us.
Nice. Such amazing points, and learning about the language leaders. And it's really got me thinking about the language that we all use in services and how we can keep improving it. Like, the work is never done. I just want to thank both of you so much for taking your time out to speak to us, and I'll catch up with you both soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Team Teach podcast. It's been great to have you here with us as we discuss behaviour, communication, and the ways we can best support those in our care. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.